I've spoken at many smart cities conferences before, and it's the usual suspects on the dais, a bunch of technology guys talking about smart city vision and going back happy that we've done our job. I think this is the first time I'm sharing the dais with a couple of distinguished mayors, so congratulations to all of you for that. That actually means that India has taken the next leap towards smart city execution, right? And I feel very happy about that also. So I'll share some of my experiences and my view on what we have been doing from a smart city and a smart city planning and execution perspective. So first of all, if you look at all of the urbanization problems, a lot of people spoke about that, right? One of the things that a lot of people tell me when I speak at these conferences and try to bring out the challenges that we experience in some of the Western cultures, first thing they say is, well, those are Western cultures, this is India, this is different. But my submission to you is, the problems in the Western culture in India are not very different. How you address them could be different. So you have the same problems of need for clean water and clean air. You have traffic problems, you have parking problems, you have street light issues, you have quality education and healthcare problems, urban poverty, crime, and then at the end of the day, everybody talks about doing more with less. Right? So these problems continue to be the same everywhere. So the big question that I would like to pose is, what if you had a very effective, and most importantly from an India perspective, a very affordable digital infrastructure available to you? Would you address your city's challenges in the same ways as before? Or would you start to look at different ways of tackling these problems? Right? That's, I think, the key to this discussion in my mind. And that's where, in our opinion, this whole aspect of the Internet of Everything comes in, which is this whole new phenomena in the industry today of connecting people, process, data, and things together, right? And that's where all of these things, tend to happen. The magic gets created, if you will, in terms of new citizen services that are available to the people, new infrastructure-related services that are offered, citywide services, business services, etc. And as a lot of the speakers have said before, this is not about IT. So smart city is not about IT. If you go into a smart city and see a lot of technology around, probably people have overdone that, right? So the technology needs to be an enabler. And a study that we've done actually indicates that globally, this whole thing which we call the new urban services industry is roughly a $4.6 trillion value in state. And that is not new business, new revenues itself. These are costs that could be saved by leveraging technology properly. $4.6 trillion is not a small number, right? And if you look at it, there are various numbers which say where those could come from, right? Smart parking, connected learning, doing water management properly. So savings of costs and new revenues add to all of those $4.6 trillion numbers, right? Huge industry that is out there. And this is where I think, one of the earlier speakers spoke about e-slaves, right? I love that term. I think India needs to wake up and look at how to offer urban services, not just to the Indian cities, but also to worldwide cities, right? There is a company in Israel which actually offers remote water management services to Singapore and some of the other countries in Europe. So why can't India do that, right? Why can't we, move away from or move ahead of our BPO game and IT services game and also get into urban services? So huge opportunity out there, I think. The most important thing is when all of this is being discussed, what you have to realize is the digital infrastructure that we are all talking about has to be integrated seamlessly and early on into the design and thinking of the cities and the buildings, right? That's the most important aspect. So far, ICT and digital infrastructure have been an afterthought. People start thinking about bringing ICT after the city is complete, right? You've laid the roads, you've done all of that, then you start talking about how do I bring broadband into the city now, right? That's where you see all of these digging of roads happening haphazardly, right? So our thinking is, our submission to all the city mayors and all of the others is, as you start to think about revamps of your cities, as you start to think about, smaller greenfield cities that are coming up, include digital master planning very early on into the stage, and that's where you realize the maximum potential, right? IT clearly is an enabler, right? And you have to start thinking of new questions that you need to ask that will enable you to get the new answers that you require, right? So from a city management perspective, what we do is we start asking these questions when we start to engage with some of our city partners. First of all, why must city services be offered by those entities within the city? Why can't you start offloading that to various other areas? And I'll show you some examples of the kind of work that we've been doing in that space, right? Does everyone need to have their own office to get their own office feeling? Can't they share infrastructure? Can they share premises, etc.? And then more importantly, in today's day and age, how can residents participate in solving city challenges, right? If you look at the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor project, where we are fairly actively engaged, by the time these cities are completely populated, it's the next generation who's going to be actively living in these cities, right? And there's one incident that comes to my mind. I was traveling to Australia the other day, and one of the airlines, I can't remember, maybe it was Qantas, they were testing their entire entertainment system on an iPad, and they started distributing those iPads to the people. And the air hostess came up and made an interesting announcement. She said, this is a new system we are testing, please play with it and give us feedback. And if you don't know how to operate that iPad, please get up and locate the smallest child close to you and we'll help you. Right? So that's where this world is moving. These little kids are going to be far more aware of technology changes than we are. And if we are building these cities for the future, why don't we build them so that they are more comfortable in those? Can they avail of government services by doing things like that, right? There's another small incident I'd like to relate to you, again, from Australia. There was a 14-year-old kid who had a need one day, which I'll describe to you in a minute, and he realized that the government was not helping him on that. And then quickly, in a few days, government started this initiative of open data, which is they opened their data on their website and put a lot of information on their websites. So he took that open data from their website and created a small app. And that app was, wherever you are in the city, by locating the GPS coordinates, etc., it will tell you where the nearest public toilet is. So that kid was in an urgent need to go, to the public toilet, and he couldn't find information on where the nearest public toilet is. So if these 14-year-old kids are going to be doing this is going to be an app economy in the world, right? So not everybody can go and offer all of these services. The government cannot be expected to do all of these. The private sector needs to step up. The young entrepreneurs need to step up. That's what is happening in a lot of cities today. If you see, a lot of cities, even in India, are starting to say, there's this app we will give you if you have, some potholes in the road, etc. You take a picture, upload it, and send it back to us. Right? I think that was inaugurated in Bangalore, and that server crashed in the first 1 hour because everybody was trying to take pictures of potholes on their road and sending it. Right? So first, you need to have the proper infrastructure before you start to bring in initiatives like that very clearly. So one of the things that we are doing is clearly from an education perspective. Lots of people have spoken about it. This picture is from Ghana, and a lot of you know the chocolate company Hershey's. Hershey's actually procures those beans for making chocolate from the city of Ghana, right? And what they do is they're trying to include those people. They realize that the people in Ghana, actually the children, are not getting proper education. So what they've done is they've started something on a connected learning platform where the children sitting in the town of Pennsylvania, where Hershey's is located, has a direct connection to that school in Ghana. So the teacher is actually teaching both those schools together. So they are doing something from a corporate social responsibility perspective also, making sure that wherever they are, their children and the people in that poor country of Ghana are also getting the same level of education. We are doing this in various other places in India today. In Bangalore, there is one popular school which uses this to avoid their teachers from traveling from one place to another. So leveraging that technology, we've done a project in a small town in Raichur outside of Bangalore, where there was a flood recently, and we did some work there. And there used to be a teacher who used to come maybe once in, or maybe twice in a week. Now that same teacher sits in his own home and leverages technology to teach 5 or 6 different rural schools. So why can't technology be leveraged to do things like that, right? Songdo in South Korea, somebody spoke about that. There are in-home tuitions that are being done by native English speakers. And if you're interested in teaching English in Korea, you should seriously consider that as a profession. You know how much an English teacher in Korea makes? $2 million a year. The best English teacher. So if some of you are looking for an alternative career, believe me, that's the one. I'm trying to polish my English skills to go do that one of these days. The other interesting thing is China. There is an astronaut, a Chinese astronaut, who actually teaches science to students in Beijing from space. So it's not a statement, but it is that value of people in China, the students in China, first of all sitting and saying, there is a Chinese astronaut who's out there. And then from there, he's able to give us some perspectives in science, etc. So the value of all this is tremendous if you look at it. Then the healthcare aspects, right? If you look at healthcare, do you really need to go to the doctor? There is a study which says that when you go to a doctor, there is probably only about 25% of the time the doctor needs to really touch you. Right? Again, why can't you leverage technology to do that remotely? Remote visits to the doctor. A lot of projects are doing this in Bangalore from a real estate perspective to beat the traffic problems and putting some remote machines like this in their real estate projects. We are doing this again in that project in Raichur that I spoke about. We put one of these remote kiosks in that village of Raichur, which looks like that picture on the left there, where there is a doctor sitting on the remote end in Bangalore, and then there is this patient sitting in Raichur in front of that screen. So initially when we started that, people said nobody's going to come there, right? This little primary healthcare clinic where a doctor used to come maybe 2 hours a day. And we put the screen in there and people said, unless the doctor is there, nobody will come. And truly, for about 4 or 5 months, nobody came. People would come and peep into that primary healthcare clinic and say, I see a television, there is no cricket game going on, what is this being used for, right? But some brave soul stepped up one day and had that one initial consultation. And today, they're doing almost 50 to 75 consultations every day remotely. Right? And the advantage is, instead of having a doctor there for 2 hours, now they have that clinic open for almost 10 hours a day. And then they have access to even specialists. So earlier they had to travel to Bangalore to see specialists. Now they don't have to. So again, local empowerment coming in there, where the local people are getting all of these facilities sitting wherever they are. Traffic problems. A lot of people spoke about that. A few years ago, the mayor of Amsterdam called for a meeting to discuss traffic issues. And he invited one of the Cisco people there. And when his turn came to speak, the first question he asked was, why do people actually travel to the city? So the mayor looked at everybody and said, who invited this guy? What kind of a dumb question is he asking? Right? But then when they started to deliberate that, they started to see important numbers. This guy started to throw out some numbers and said, in the central business district in a lot of the cities, almost 20 to 25% of the people who are there in the CBD are actually there looking for a parking spot. So if they had access to immediate parking, 20 to 25% of their traffic would have reduced immediately. There's a staggering number. There was a study which was done that in Paris, a person on an average spends about 10 to 12 years of his life looking for a parking space. That's how serious the problem is, right? And how do we then solve that problem? From a traffic perspective, what we are doing is we're working with the local governments and saying, how do we take away some of those challenges of people going to the city? And I'll show you some pictures of what we've done in that particular respect. Parking. Don't tell me anybody in this room has not had a parking problem. Every one of us face this problem every day. So how do we do that in a better fashion? How do we make parking a good experience for people, right? We're working with various companies where there are these very, very inexpensive sensors that are deployed in the road, in the parking spot rather, which tells you whether that parking space is available or not. And cities in California are actually making money out of that. They are selling that to the restaurants. And what the restaurants are doing is if you call them and say, okay, I'm coming for dinner at 8 o'clock, they tell you, okay, we'll reserve a parking spot right in front of our restaurant for you. So the restaurant is actually paying in advance for the parking spot. And look at that customer experience. I go back to that restaurant again and again if I get that kind of an experience where the restaurant is actually reserving a parking spot for you. What a beautiful idea, right? And that solves a lot of the parking challenges. And globally, in India we'll have to work these numbers, but globally, parking actually pays for all of the digital infrastructure that you put in. Cities are making so much more money in structured parking systems. That's one of the biggest initiatives that sells. Street lighting is another big challenge that is out there, right? How do you make street lighting more efficient and cost effective? And what we are doing again is a solution where instead of the street lights glowing at constant lumens everywhere, can't you dim them down and sense when people or traffic is passing and then increase the light a little bit? So you're saving on energy, you're providing safety and security to people, and you meet all of those criteria, become green and all of that stuff, right? Waste management is another problem. Today, if you look at any major country, you have all of these garbage trucks moving around the city at prime hours, and their job is to go pick up these garbage cans, right? Not all of these garbage cans are full every day, but you still see these trucks moving around, right? So we're doing a pilot in the city of Barcelona and the city of Nice in France, where we put sensors in these garbage bins. And that sensor actually alerts the city council when it reaches a threshold and says, okay, today I'm close to being full, so come and pick me up, right? They also, that sensor actually also has a sense of smell integrated into it. So it says, although I'm not full, there's a lot of smelly garbage in here, can you come pick that up today, right? So the guy who's driving around then can actually plan his trip and say, okay, I will go to these particular garbage cans today and pick up the garbage. And imagine, by doing that, he's taking away some of the traffic problems in the city. Right? So those are all the things that are adding up. He's saving on fuel, etc. And those are interesting ideas that are being delivered. And city-wide management is something that is becoming very popular. How do you manage all of these services that I spoke about in an integrated fashion from one central location? I think Vincent also spoke about this. This is a picture from Songdo where we are doing all of these services managed from one central location. Very, very well-coordinated management of services. This is an example of a virtual city hall. This is a kiosk that is put in a mall in the city of Nice in France. And what happens is, if a person needs to get some city services, instead of driving into the central business district, instead of going to the city hall, creating traffic problems, creating parking problems, person comes up to the mall and is able to transact a lot of his services at that particular kiosk. Death certificate, birth certificate, a lot of the regular things you do, driver's license renewals, all of these are done. And if you see within that kiosk, there is a video conferencing session going on. The person sitting in the city hall is able to talk to the person and take care of all of these services. When we installed this, 1 month after the installation, we got an interesting use case that we were not prepared for. But immediately then we started preparing for it. A couple walked in and said, why do I need to go to the court for getting married? Can't you do this here? Right. So that's the new use case for us now. So court marriages are now being held in these kiosks in Nice and Barcelona. And in a lot of other places, as you see, Brisbane in Australia and Mexico and some of the others, right? So If you look at all of these things, is this a new dawn or a false beginning? That's the question that we all need to ask. Right? Our perspective is that it is a new dawn. And interestingly enough, these industries need to change to take care of the technological changes out there, to take advantage of these technological changes out there. Thomas Edison, he died, lots of years ago. If he came back today, he'd look at this and say, yeah, this was a music instrument that I created. But if he looks at the music instrument of today, which is an iPod or a cell phone, he says, what the hell is this? But on the other hand, in 1892, Thomas Edison designed the electric grid. If he comes back today, he look at that electric grid and says, this looks like version 2.1 of what I created. There is no technology being leveraged in that. Lots of power problems that we have today will go away if people start to use technology in power departments, right? Smart grid is something that is being actively spoken about. And that will solve a lot of the power problems that we have today. So, at the end of this is not vaporware. We have a lot of experience of having done this in various places. Here, closer to home in India, we are working with the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. We've done the digital planning for 4 of the smart cities on there, including Tholera, which is the first one to get, to move to an execution stage. And there are various other projects. So we have experience from an India perspective, we have experience from a global perspective that, I would invite a lot of the audience to come and talk to us and see how we can help you with some of those. But the key elements for success for smart city projects in our mind is, first of all, you need visionary leadership. The leadership needs to stand up and say, this is what we are going to do. You have to have global open standards. Today, if you go to a doctor, take an X-ray to a doctor in US and show him something, a report, he will point out to your heart and say, this is a heart. And you bring the same report to a doctor in India, he will point out to the same organ and say, this is a heart. But if you go from one city to another today, look at water management systems, look at e-government systems. No global standards, everybody is doing things their own way. So our view is that for smart cities to be a success, there have to be global open standards. Smart regulation is important, right? As you come into smart cities, the cities will have to step up and say there are some changes, like what is being done in Tholera, for example, with the SIR Act, right? Special Investment Region Act, where the special purpose vehicle there is actually invested with a lot of power to do smart services, etc. So that regulation will have to change going forward. Public-private partnerships become very important. Private players are ready to step up. I think that needs to be one of the cornerstones of smart city implementation. And clearly there needs to be a new ecosystem of partners that need to be brought together to work on this. Thank you very much.